The music hit me like a tidal wave, a pulsing beat that shook the gymnasium walls and set my heart racing. I stood at the edge of the freshman welcome event, a nervous 18-year-old in a sea of strangers, watching bodies spin and flip in a breakdance battle that felt like it could ignite the air. Then I saw him, a blur of confidence, his sneakers squeaking as he owned the dance floor, and I knew my life was about to change. I'm Ethan Carter, a small-town kid from Ohio who just landed at UCLA with a suitcase full of dreams and a heart full of doubts. The freshman welcome event was my first taste of college life, a chaotic explosion of music, laughter, and new faces. I'd always been the quiet one, the guy who sketched in the margins of his notebooks and kept his head down. But tonight, something pulled me toward the crowd, toward the circle where the breakdance challenge was unfolding. The gym was a kaleidoscope of color. Neon banners, flashing lights, and students cheering like they'd known each other forever. I hovered near the back, my palms sweaty, feeling like an outsider in my own story. That's when I noticed him. He was tall, lean, with tousled blonde hair that caught the light as he spun on one hand, his body defying gravity. His name, I'd later learn, was Lucas Reed, a freshman like me, but with a fire in his movements that made everyone else fade into the background. Lucas landed a perfect flare, his legs slicing through the air, and the crowd erupted. My breath caught, not just at his skill, but at the way his eyes sparkled with mischief, like he knew a secret the rest of us didn't. Someone shouted, "Who's next?" And before I could think, my feet moved forward. I wasn't a dancer, not even close, but something about Lucas's energy dared me to step into the circle. "Yo, new guy," Lucas called, his voice cutting through the noise. "You got moves?" His grin was infectious, and I felt a spark of courage I didn't know I had. I shook my head, laughing nervously, but the crowd was already chanting, "Go, go." My heart pounded, but I couldn't back down now. I stepped into the circle, mimicking a clumsy spin I'd seen in a YouTube video once. The crowd roared with laughter, but it wasn't cruel. It was warm, encouraging. Lucas jumped in, mirroring my awkward move with exaggerated flair, turning my failure into a performance. "Not bad, man," he shouted, clapping me on the shoulder. His touch sent a jolt through me, and for a moment, the world shrank to just us, two strangers connected by a beat and a shared laugh. The music faded, and the crowd moved on to the next challenger, but Lucas lingered. "What's your name, rookie?" he asked, his blue eyes locking onto mine. "Ethan," I managed, my voice barely audible over the din, "and you're—" "Lucas. Stick around, Ethan. You got potential." He winked, and just like that, he was gone, swallowed by the crowd. I stood there, dazed, my heart hammering not from the dance, but from the way his smile had carved itself into my memory. The next few weeks were a blur of classes, dorm life, and trying to find my place in a world that felt too big. UCLA's campus was a maze of palm trees, lecture halls, and students who seemed to know exactly who they were. I was still figuring that out. Growing up in a small town, I'd always known I was different, not just because I loved art or preferred books to parties, but because of the feelings I'd buried deep. Feelings I'd never dared to name, let alone act on. Lucas, though, was impossible to ignore. I'd see him around campus, laughing with friends outside the library, tossing a frisbee on the quad, or grabbing coffee at the student union. Each time, he'd flash that same grin and call out, "Yo, Ethan, still working on those moves." I'd blush, mumble something incoherent, and hurry away, terrified of what my racing pulse might mean. One afternoon, I was sketching by the fountain in the courtyard when Lucas plopped down beside me. "What's this?" he asked, peering at my sketchbook. It was a rough drawing of the breakdance battle, with him at the center, mid-spin. My cheeks burned as I tried to close the book, but he gently stopped me. "Dude, this is sick," he said, his voice soft with awe. "You're an artist." "It's just a hobby," I muttered, but his praise warmed me in a way I couldn't explain. We talked for hours that day, about music, movies, and the pressure of being freshmen in a place that felt like it could swallow you whole. Lucas was from San Diego, a surfer kid with big dreams of studying marine biology. He was open, fearless, everything I wasn't. And yet, he seemed to see something in me that I couldn't see in myself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the courtyard, Lucas leaned closer. "You ever feel like you're hiding something from the world?" he asked, his voice low, almost hesitant. I froze, my heart thudding. Did he know? Could he see the truth I'd been running for my whole life? "Maybe," I whispered, my throat tight. "What about you?" He looked away, his jaw tightening. "Yeah, all the time." For a moment, we sat in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. Then he stood, brushing off his jeans. "Come to the next dance battle, Ethan. I want a rematch." He flashed that grin again, but this time there was something deeper in his eyes, something that made my heart ache with possibility. That night, I lay awake in my dorm, staring at the ceiling. Lucas's words echoed in my mind, stirring feelings I tried to bury. I'd grown up in a place where being different wasn't just frowned upon, it was dangerous. My dad, a mechanic with a temper, had made it clear what he thought of people like that. My mom, kind but quiet, never challenged him. I learned to keep my head down, to hide who I was. But Lucas, he made me want to be brave. The next dance battle was a week later, and I spent every spare moment practicing in my dorm, watching tutorials and tripping over my own feet. I wasn't doing it to win. I was doing it to see Lucas again, to feel that spark of connection. When the night arrived, the gym was even louder than before, the air thick with anticipation. I found Lucas warming up in the corner, his movements fluid and confident. "You showed up," he said, his face lighting up. "Ready to lose again, ready to surprise you." I shot back, surprising myself with my boldness. The crowd formed a circle, and Lucas went first, his moves sharper than ever. When it was my turn, I stumbled through a basic routine, earning cheers for effort rather than skill. But Lucas was there, hyping me up, turning my clumsy spins into a moment of shared joy. Afterward, we grabbed sodas and sat on the gym steps, the night air cool against our skin. "You're getting better," Lucas said, nudging my shoulder. "But you're still no match for me." "Give me time," I said, laughing. "I'll steal your crown." He looked at me then, his eyes soft and searching. "You already stole something," he said quietly, and my heart stopped. Before I could respond, he stood, offering me his hand. "Come on, artist. Let's get out of here." We walked across campus, the stars bright above us, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged, not just at UCLA, but in my own skin. Lucas didn't push, didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. He just walked beside me, his presence steady and warm, like a promise of something more. Lucas and I started spending more time together, our friendship growing like a melody you can't stop humming. We'd meet between classes, grab burgers at the food trucks, or sprawl out on the quad, my sketchbook open while he rambled about ocean currents and whale migrations. Every moment with him felt like a brushstroke on a canvas, adding color to a life I'd always seen in grayscale. But there was a tension beneath it all, a question neither of us dared to ask. I'd catch him looking at me sometimes, his eyes lingering a beat too long, and my stomach would flip. I wanted to tell him how I felt, how his laugh made my chest ache, but fear kept me silent. Growing up, I'd heard too many slurs, seen too many clenched fists to believe love could be simple. One crisp October evening, Lucas invited me to a bonfire at the beach, a student-organized event to celebrate midterms being over. The Santa Monica shore was alive with music, laughter, and the crackle of flames. I arrived late, my nerves jangling, and found Lucas near the fire, his silhouette glowing against the flickering light. He waved me over, handed me a marshmallow on a stick. "You're late, artist," he teased, his voice warm. "Sorry," I said, settling beside him on a driftwood log. "Got lost in a sketch." "Always drawing," he said, shaking his head. "You ever draw me when I'm not looking?" My face heated, and I focused on roasting my marshmallow, hoping the firelight hid my blush. "Maybe," I mumbled, and he laughed, a sound that felt like home. As the night wore on, the crowd thinned, leaving just a few stragglers around the dying fire. Lucas and I stayed, talking about everything and nothing, our favorite movies, our worst high school moments, our dreams for the future. The conversation turned quiet, intimate, as the waves crashed softly in the background. "You ever think about what you'd do if you weren't afraid?" Lucas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He was staring at the fire, but I could feel the weight of his question. "All the time," I said, my heart pounding, "but fear's a hard thing to shake." He turned to me then, his eyes reflecting the flames. "Yeah, but what if it's worth it?" Before I could respond, he leaned closer, his breath warm against my cheek. "Ethan, he stopped, his jaw tightening, like he was wrestling with words too big to say. My pulse raced, and I wanted to bridge the gap, to tell him I felt the same, but the ghosts of my past held me back. Instead, I reached for his hand, my fingers brushing his. It was a small gesture, but it felt like jumping off a cliff. His hand closed around mine, strong and steady, and for a moment, the world was perfect. The next day, reality crashed in. I was in the library, hunched over a history textbook, when I overheard a group of guys at the next table. "Did you see Lucas at the beach?" one said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Holding hands with that artsy kid? Bet they're more than friends." My stomach dropped. I kept my head down, but their laughter sliced through me, each word a reminder of why I kept my feelings locked away. I grabbed my books and bolted, my mind spinning. What if they were right? What if everyone could see what I was so afraid to admit? I avoided Lucas for days, skipping our usual hangouts and dodging his texts. I told myself it was for the best, that I was protecting us both. But every time I saw his name light up my phone, my chest ached with longing. Finally, he cornered me outside my dorm, his expression a mix of worry and frustration. "Ethan, what's going on?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "You ghosted me for a week, and now you won't even look at me?" "I'm sorry," I said, staring at the ground. I heard some guys talking. About us. At the beach. His face softened, but there was a fire in his eyes. "And you let them get to you?" "Ethan, I don't care what they think. Do you?" I wanted to say no, to be as fearless as he was, but the words stuck in my throat. "It's not that simple," I said finally. "Where I'm from, people like us, we don't get to be happy." Lucas stepped closer, his voice low and fierce. "Then we make our own happiness. Right here, right now." Before I could argue, he pulled me into a hug, his arms strong and sure. I buried my face in his shoulder, breathing in the scent of his cologne, and for the first time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I could be brave. We started spending even more time together, but now there was an unspoken shift. Our touches lingered, our glances held secrets. One night, after a late study session in the library, Lucas walked me back to my dorm. The campus was quiet, the air crisp with the promise of winter. At the door, he stopped, his hand brushing mine. "Ethan," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." My heart raced, but before he could continue, a shout broke the silence. "Fags!" The word hit like a punch, and I turned to see a group of guys across the quad, their faces shadowed, but their malice clear. Lucas tensed, his hand tightening around mine. "Ignore them," he said, but his voice was strained. We hurried inside, the moment shattered. In the safety of my dorm, I sank onto the bed, my hands shaking. Lucas sat beside me, his expression a mix of anger and sadness. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm not strong like you." "You are," he said fiercely. "You're here, aren't you? That's strength." He reached for my hand again, and this time I didn't pull away. We sat there in silence, the weight of the world outside fading as we held onto each other. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but in that moment, I knew I wasn't alone. The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk between joy and fear. Lucas and I grew closer, our bond deepening with every shared laugh, every late-night talk. But the incident outside my dorm lingered like a shadow, a reminder that the world wasn't always kind to people like us. I wanted to be fearless, to love Lucas openly, but doubt gnawed at me, whispering that happiness like this couldn't last. One rainy afternoon, we were holed up in Lucas's dorm, sprawled on his bed with textbooks scattered around us. The storm outside rattled the windows, but inside, it was warm, safe. Lucas was reading aloud from a marine biology journal, his voice animated Hannah Montana's, animated. "Coral reefs are like underwater cities," he said, his eyes bright with passion. I was sketching him again, capturing the way his hands moved as he talked, the curve of his smile. "You're staring?" he teased, glancing up. I blushed, closing my sketchbook, but he reached over, flipping it open. "Let me see," he said, his voice soft. The drawing was of him, mid-laugh, his energy leaping off the page. "Ethan, this is incredible," he said, his fingers brushing mine. "You make me look alive." "You're alive," I said, my voice catching. "More than anyone I've ever met." He looked at me then, his eyes soft and serious. "You make me feel alive too," he said quietly. Before I could respond, he leaned in, his lips brushing mine in a tentative, electric kiss. My heart exploded, and I kissed him back, my fears melting in the warmth of his touch. It was our first kiss, a moment that felt like the start of something unstoppable. But the world outside didn't stop. The next day, we were walking across campus when a familiar voice sneered, "Look, it's the Lovebirds." It was one of the guys from that night, flanked by two others, their smirks sharp as knives. My stomach twisted, but Lucas stepped forward, his voice steady. "Got a problem?" He challenged, his stance protective. The leader, a broad-shouldered guy named Jake, laughed. "Just calling like I see it. You two are disgusting." The words hit me hard, but Lucas didn't flinch. "What's disgusting is your attitude," he shot back. "Grow up." Jake's face darkened, and for a moment, I thought he might swing. But a passerby, a professor, maybe, called out, and the group scattered. Lucas turned to me, his expression fierce. "Don't let them win, Ethan. They don't get to define us." I nodded, but the encounter left me shaken. That night, I called my mom, needing her comfort. I didn't tell her about Lucas, but I hinted at struggling to fit in. "Just be yourself, honey," she said, her voice warm but distant. I wanted to tell her everything, to share this part of me, but fear stopped me. What if she couldn't accept it? What if I lost her too? Lucas sensed my unease and suggested we skip the next dance battle for something quieter. He took me to a small art gallery off campus, a place filled with vibrant paintings and soft music. Thought you'd like this better than a crowded gym, he said, his smile knowing. We wandered through the exhibits, our shoulders brushing, and I felt a peace I hadn't known was possible. He stopped in front of a painting of two figures embracing under a starry sky. Reminds me of us, he said, his voice low. Two people finding each other in a big, messy world. I wanted to freeze that moment, to hold on to the way he made me feel, seen, valued, loved. But the world kept intruding. A week later, we were at a coffee shop when Jake and his crew walked in. They didn't say anything this time, but their glares were enough. I shrank in my seat, but Lucas reached for my hand under the table, his grip steady. We're okay, he whispered. We're more than okay. Winter break was approaching, and with it, the looming reality of going home. I hadn't told my family about Lucas, and the thought of facing them, especially my dad, made my stomach churn. Lucas, sensing my tension, suggested a weekend getaway to Big Sur, just the two of us. Let's escape the noise, he said, his eyes bright with adventure. I couldn't say no. The drive up the coast was breathtaking, the ocean stretching endlessly to our left, cliffs rising to our right. We camped under the stars, the sound of waves lulling us into a peace I'd never known. That night, by a crackling campfire, Lucas took my hand. Ethan, I love you, he said, his voice steady but vulnerable. I don't know what comes next, but I know I want it with you. Tears stung my eyes as I whispered, I love you too. We kissed under the starlit sky, the world fading until it was just us, our hearts beating as one. For those 2 days, we were free. No judgment, no fear, just love. But back on campus, the tension returned. Jake and his friends escalated their taunts, leaving notes on my dorm door with slurs scrawled in angry ink. Lucas wanted to confront them, but I begged him to let it go. It's not worth it, I said, my voice trembling. They'll graduate, move on. We just have to survive. Survive, Lucas echoed, his eyes flashing. Ethan, we're not just surviving. We're living. And I'm not hiding who I am, or who we are. His words hit hard, forcing me to confront my own fear. I wanted to be like him, unapologetic and proud, but the weight of my past, of my family's expectations, held me back. I promised myself I'd tell them over break, that I'd finally be honest. But when I got home to Ohio, the words wouldn't come. My dad's gruff voice, his casual bigotry, silenced me. I spent the holidays dodging questions, my heart heavy with secrets. When we returned to UCLA, Lucas noticed the change in me. You're pulling away again, he said one night, his voice tight with hurt. We were in his dorm, the air thick with unspoken tension. Talk to me, Ethan. Please. I broke down, telling him about my dad, my fear of losing my family. Lucas listened, his hand on mine, his eyes steady. You don't have to do this alone, he said. I'm here. Always. His support gave me strength, and I started seeing a campus counselor, working through the tangle of fear and shame I'd carried for years. Slowly, I began to believe I deserved happiness. Lucas and I grew even closer, our love a quiet rebellion against a world that didn't always understand. Spring semester brought new challenges, but also new hope. Lucas and I decided to perform together at the final dance battle of the year, a bold statement of our love. We practiced for weeks, blending my clumsy spins with his fluid moves, creating a routine that was ours alone. The night of the event, the gym was packed, the energy electric. Jake and his crew were there, their glares predictable, but I refused to let them win. We took the floor, our movements synchronized, our connection undeniable. The crowd cheered, and for the first time, I didn't care who was watching. We ended with Lucas dipping me dramatically, our faces inches apart, and the crowd roared. It was our victory, not just over Jake, but over fear itself. Afterward, we walked to the lake, the same spot where we'd shared that quiet moment months ago. Under the stars, I turned to Lucas. I'm ready, I said. I'm going to tell my family. I want to live openly with you. He pulled me into his arms, his voice thick with emotion. I'm so proud of you, Ethan. That summer, I went home and told my parents. My dad's face hardened, and he walked out of the room. My mom cried but hugged me, whispering, I just want you to be happy. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Back at UCLA, Lucas and I moved into an apartment together, our love growing stronger with every challenge we faced. We joined the campus LGBTQ plus group, finding a community that embraced us. Jake's taunts faded as he flunked out, his hatred irrelevant in the face of our joy. Years later, at our graduation, Lucas and I stood hand in hand, our caps tilted at Johnny angles. We'd made it, not just through college, but through the journey of becoming ourselves. The breakdance challenge that started it all was a distant memory, but its spark had ignited a love that changed everything. As we tossed our caps into the air, I knew we'd face whatever came next together.